Cheers, it's Paul Saint-Amour and Rob Barry. We're back again. We kept talking and we realized the conversation wasn't over, so we're back. And we thought we'd circle back to the theme of the convulsive times we're all living through. I was mentioning the Black Lives Matter protests and the pandemic, and I wanted to kind of drill down a little bit and think about what actually precipitated these necessary protests, which is police violence. You know, Ulysses is a book set in 1904, published in 1922, but it's written during the First World War. It's written during the time of the Easter Rising in 1916, when a group of rebels declare the Irish Free State, and the British reprisals are extremely violent and devastate a lot of the center of the city of Dublin. And it's a book that is sort of vibrating with the violence that happens in an occupied city. Right? So Dublin in 1904 is occupied by the British, who are exerting something between a kind of military and police presence. And in the Circe episode we were talking about a little earlier, the sort of climactic event is a brawl between an English soldier who's part of that occupying force and an Irish civilian, Stephen Dedalus, whom he punches. So
civilian,
right there,
civilian and poet.
Yeah, right there at the apex of this book is this moment of military/police on civilian violence. So in a funny way, this book, which is almost 100 years old, is resonating in very particular ways with our moment this summer. What do you think, Rob? Is that part of what you find in Ulysses? Is a kind of a way back to the present?
I think it's important to note that now. I think it's important to note that, as we said, there is no change without conflict. And we have to continue to recognize that moving forward. But it's been true for at least 100 years since this book came. And it stays that way.
And it's a book that has inspired subsequent writing by a wide array of writers, including really dissident writers of color. So Ulysses, on the one hand, is this thing that we keep coming back to and celebrating, rightly so. But it's also a place where other projects start. You know, other projects of imagining a better future. And that's something we want to celebrate today as well. Not Ulysses as the end of the story, but Ulysses as the beginning of a lot of other stories, including maybe some of the stories of people who are watching today and can draw inspiration from this insurrectionist book in kicking off the chains of our present moment and trying to bring about something better. Toast?
Absolutely, and I'd like to do it with Joyce's earlier book, but still has so much resonance here, and is still Stephen Dedalus, who gets beat up by a cop. When a man is born, there are nets flung at it to hold it back from flight. You talk to me of nationality, language, religion. I shall try to fly above those nets. Cheers.
Happy Bloomsday.
Happy Bloomsday.
Hello, my name is Mark Moore, and today I will be reading the fireworks section from chapter 13, Nausicaa, pages 298 to 301. This scene takes place around 8 o'clock in the evening on Sandymount Strand, and there are three young women, Sissy, Edie, and Gertie, enjoying the evening. They're also out with Sissy's younger twin brothers, Tommy and Jackie, and Edie's baby brother, Boardman. There's also a men's temperance retreat being held in the nearby church. Gertie is brooding on her crush, Reggie Wiley, and she notices a dark stranger sitting nearby, which prompts a series of thoughts, which I will share with you in a moment. For now, sit back and enjoy the view, as it were, although I do need to give you a warning. This scene involves explicit fireworks imagery. How moving the scene there in the gathering twilight. The last glimpse of Erin, the touching chime of those evening bells, and at the same time a pat flew forth from the ivied belfry through the dusk, hither, thither, with a tiny lost cry. And she could see far away the lights of the lighthouses, so picturesque she would have loved to do with a box of paints, because it was easier than to make a man. And soon the lamplighter would be going his rounds past the Presbyterian church grounds and along by shady Tritonville Avenue where the couples walked, and lighting the lamp near her window where Reggie Wiley used to turn his free will, like she read in that book, The Lamplighter by Miss Cummings, author of Mabel Vaughan and other tales. For Gertie had her dreams that no one knew of. She loved to read poetry, and when she got a keepsake from Bertha Supple of that lovely confession album with the coral pink cover to write her thoughts in, she laid it in the drawer of her toiletable, which, though it did not err on the side of luxury, was scrupulously neat and clean. It was there she kept her girlish treasure trove, the tortoise-shell combs, her Child of Mary badge, the white rose scent, the eyebrow line, her alabaster pouncet box, and the ribbons to change when her things came home from the wash. And there were some beautiful thoughts written in it in violet ink that she bought in Healy's of Dame Street. For she felt that she too could write poetry if she could only express herself like that poem that appealed to her so deeply that she had copied it out of the newspaper she found one evening round the potherbs. Art Thou Real, My Ideal, it was called, by Lewis J. Walsh, Mahara felt. And after there was something about twilight, wilt thou ever? And oft times the beauty of poetry, so sad in its transient loveliness, had misted her eyes with silent tears, for she felt that the years were slipping by for her one by one. And but for that one shortcoming, she knew she need fear no competition, and that was an accident coming down Dalkey Hill, and she always tried to conceal it. But it must end, she felt. If she saw that magic lure in his eyes, there would be no holding back for her. Love laughs at locksmiths. She would make the great sacrifice. Her every effort would be to share his thoughts. Dearer than the whole world would she be to him and gild his days with happiness. There was the all-important question, and she was dying to know. Was he a married man or a widower who had lost his wife? Or some tragedy, like the nobleman with the foreign name from the land of song had to have her put into a madhouse, cruel only to be kind. But even if, what then? Would it make a very great difference? From everything in the least indelicate, her fine-bred nature instinctively recoiled. She loathed that sort of person, the fallen women off the accommodation walk beside a daughter that went with the soldiers and coarse men with no respect for a girl's honour, degrading the sex and being taken up to the police station. No, not that. They would be just good friends, like a big brother and sister, without all that other, in spite of the conventions of society with a big S. Perhaps it was an old flame he was in mourning for, from the days beyond recall. She thought she understood. She would try to understand him because men were so different. The old love was waiting with little white hands stretched out, with blue appealing eyes. Heart of mine, she would follow her dream of love, the dictates of her heart that told her he was her all in all, the only man in all the world for her, for love was the master guide. Nothing else mattered. Come what might, she would be wild, untrammeled, free. Canon O'Hanlon put the Blessed Sacrament back into the tabernacle, and genuflected, and the choir sang Laudate Dominum Omnes Gentes. And then he locked the tabernacle door, because the benediction was over, and Father Conroy handed him his hat to put on. And Cross Cat Edie asked, wasn't she coming? But Jackie Caffrey called out, oh, look, Sissy! And they all looked. Was it sheet lightning? But Tommy saw it too over the trees beside the church, blue and then green and purple. It's fireworks, Sissy Caffrey said. And they all ran down the strand to see over the houses and the church, helter-skelter. Eddie with the push car with baby Boardman in it, and Sissy holding Tommy and Jackie by the hand, so they wouldn't fall running. "Come on, Gertie," Sissy called. "It's the bazaar fireworks." But Gertie was adamant. She had no intention of being at their beck and call. If they could run like rosies, she could sit. So she said she could see from where she was. The eyes that were fastened upon her set her pulses tingling. She looked at him a moment, meeting his glance, and a light broke in upon her. White-hot passion was in that face. Passion silent as the grave, and it had made her his. At last they were left alone without the others to pry and pass remarks, and she knew he could be trusted to the death. Steadfast, a sterling man, a man of inflexible honour to his fingertips. His hands and face were working, and a tremor went over her. She leaned back far to look up where the fireworks were, and she caught her knee in her hands so as not to fall back looking up. And there was no one to see, only him and her, when she revealed all her graceful, beautifully shaped legs like that, supplely soft and delicately rounded. And she seemed to hear the panting of his heart, his hoarse breathing, because she knew too about the passion of men like that, hot-blooded, because Bertha Supple told her once in dead secret and made her swear she'd never, about the gentleman lodger that was staying with them out of the congested district boards, that had pictures cut out of papers of those skirt dancers and high kickers. And she said he used to do something not very nice that you could imagine sometimes in bed. But this was altogether different from a thing like that. Because there was all the difference, because she could almost feel him draw her face to his, and the first quick, hot touch of his handsome lips. Besides, there was absolution, so long as you didn't do the other thing before being married. And there ought to be women priests that would understand without your telling out. And Sissy Caffrey, too, sometimes had that dreamy look in her eyes, so that she, too, my dear, and Winnie Rippingham, so mad about actors' photographs. And besides, it was on account of that other thing coming on the way it did. And Jackie Caffrey shouted to look. There was another. And she leaned back, and the garters were blue to match on account of the transparent. And they all saw it, and they all shouted to look. Look, there it was. And she leaned back ever so far to see the fireworks. And something queer was flying through the air, a soft thing, to and fro, dark. And she saw a long Roman candle going up over the trees, up, and in the tense hush, they were all breathless with excitement as it went higher and higher. And she had to lean back more and more to look up after it, high, almost out of sight. And her face was suffused with a divine and entrancing blush from straining back, and he could see her other things too, main-suck knickers, the fabric that caresses the skin better than those other Pettit with, the green 4 and 11 on account of being white, and she let him, and she saw that he saw, and then it went so high it went out of sight a moment, and she was trembling in every limb from being bent so far back that he had a full view high up above her knee, where no one ever, not even on the swing or wading, and she wasn't ashamed, and he wasn't either, to look in that immodest way like that, because he couldn't resist the sight of the wondrous revealment, half offered, like those skirt dancers behaving so immodest before the gentleman looking, and he kept on looking. She would fain have cried to him chokingly, held out her snowy, slender arms to him to come, to feel his lips laid on her white brow, the cry of a young girl's love, a little strangled cry wrung from her, that cry that has rung through the ages. And then a rocket sprang and bang, shoot, blind, blank, and oh! Then the Roman candle burst, and it was like a sigh of oh! And everyone cried, oh! In raptures, and it gushed out of it a stream of rain gold hair threads, and they shed, and they were all greeny, dewy stars falling with golden, oh, so lovely, oh, soft, sweet, soft. Then all melted away dewily in the grey air. All was silent. She glanced at him as she bent forward quickly. A pathetic little glance of piteous protest, of shy reproach under which he coloured like a girl. He was leaning back against the rock behind, Leopold Bloom, for it is he, stands silent, with bowed head before those young guileless eyes. What a brute he had been, at it again. A fair unsullied soul had called to him, and wretch that he was, how had he answered? Another cad he had been, he of all men. But there was an infinite store of mercy in those eyes. For him too a word of pardon, even though he had erred and sinned and wandered. Should a girl tell? No, 1,000 times no. That was their secret, only theirs, alone in the hiding twilight, and there was none to know or tell, save the little bat that flew so softly through the evening, to and fro, and little bats don't tell. Happy Bloomsday from the Rosenbach.
Hi, happy Bloomsday from the Rosenbach. My name is Joseph Lennon. I'm the director of the Center for Irish Studies at Villanova University, the Emily C. Riley director. We are very proud to be continuing some activities during the pandemic. I hope that you enjoy this reading. I'm going to be reading from chapter 13, episode 13, Nausicaa. They've given me a reflective passage about male excesses or enthusiasms or enjoyments. This is a passage where Leopold Bloom is on Sandy Mount Strand, the same place where we saw Stephen earlier in the morning, writing in the dirt. And here Bloom is post-coitus, thinking about Gertie McDowell. And he has just been thinking about his daughter, Millie, as well, in a slightly different context, thinking about when she has grown up and left. And he's also thinking about his wife at home. Better not stick here all night like a limpet. This weather makes you dull. Must be getting on for 9 by the light. Go home. Too late for Leah, Lily of Killarney. No. Might still be up. Call to the hospital to see. Hope she's over. Long day I've had. Martha, the bath, the funeral, house of keys, museum with those goddesses, Daedalus a song. And that baller in Barney Kiernan's. Got my own back there. Drunken ranter's what I said about his God. Made him wince. Mistake to hit back. Or, no. Ought to go home and laugh at themselves. Always want to be swilling in company. Afraid to be alone like a child of 2. Suppose he hit me. We'll go the other way around. Not so bad then. Perhaps not to hurt, he meant. 3 cheers for Israel. 3 cheers for the sister-in-law he hawked about. 3 fangs in her mouth. Same style of beauty. Particularly nice old party for a cup of tea. The sister of the wife of the wild man of Borneo has just come to town. Imagine that in the early morning at close range. Everyone to his taste, as Morris said when he kissed the cow. But Dignam's put the boots on it. Houses of mourning so depressing because you never know. Anyhow, she wants the money. Must call to those Scottish widows as I promised. Strange name. Takes it for granted we're going to pop off first. That widow on Monday, was it outside Kramer's that looked at me? Buried the poor husband, but progressing favorably on the premium. Her widow's mite. Well, what do you expect her to do? Must wheedle her way along? Widower I hate to see. Looks so forlorn. Poor man, O'Connor's wife and 5 children poisoned by mussels there. The sewage, hopeless. Some good matronly woman in a pork pie hat to mother him. Take him in tow, platter face and a large apron. Ladies' large flanulette bloomers, 3 shillings a pair. Astonishing bargain. Plain and loved forever, they say. Ugly. No woman thinks she is. Love, lie and be handsome, for tomorrow we die. See him sometimes walking about trying to find out who played the trick. U, P, up. Fate, that is. He, not me. Also, a shop often noticed. Curse seems to dog it. Dreamt last night? Wait, something confused. She had red slippers on. Turkish. Wore the breeches. Suppose she does. I like her in pajamas. Damned hard to answer. Nanetti's gone. Mailboat. Near Holyhead by now. Must nail that ad if Keys is. Work, Hines and Crawford. Petticoats for Molly. She has something to put in them. What's that? Might be money. Mr. Bloom stooped, and turned over a piece of paper on the strand. He brought it near his eyes and peered. Letter? No, can't read. Better go. Better. I'm tired to move. Page of an old copybook. All those holes and pebbles. Who could count them? Never know what you find. Bottle with story of a treasure in it. Thrown from a wreck. Parcels, post. Children always want to throw things in the sea. Trust. Bread cast on the water. What's this? Bit of stick? Oh, exhausted that female has me. Not so young now. Will she come back here tomorrow? Wait for her somewhere. Forever. Must come back. Murderers do. Will I? Mr. Bloom with his stick gently vexed the thick sand at his foot. Write a message for her. Might remain. What? Some flatfoot tramp on it in the morning. Pff, useless. Washed away. Tide comes here. Saw a pool near her foot. Bend, see my face there. Dark mirror. Breathe on it, stirs. All these rocks with lines and scars and letters. Oh, those transparent. Besides, they don't know. What is the meaning of that other world? I call you naughty boy because I do not like it. Am a no room. Let it go. Mr. Bloom effaced the letters with his slow boot. Hopeless thing, sand. Nothing grows in it. All fades. No fear of big vessels coming up here, except Guinness's barges. Round the Kish in 80 days. Done half by design. He flung his wooden pen away. The stick fell in silted sand, stuck. Now, if you were trying to do that for a week on end, you couldn't. Chance. We'll never meet again. But it was lovely. Goodbye, dear. Thanks. Made me feel so young. Short snooze now if I had. Must be near 9. Liverpool boat, long gone. Not even the smoke. and she can do the other. Did too. And Belfast. I won't go. Race there, race back to Ennis. Let him. Just close my eyes a moment. Won't sleep, though. Half dream. It never comes the same. Bat again. No harm in him. Just a few. Oh, sweetie. All your little girl white up I saw, dirty brace girdle made me do love sticky. We too naughty, Grace, darling, she, him, half past the bed. Met him pike hoses, frillies for Raoul, the perfume your wife, black hair. He, Vunder Embon, Signorita, young eyes, Mulvey, plump bubs, me. Red Van Winkle, red slippers. She rusty sleep, wander years of dreams, return tail end, Agendath. Swoony lovey showed me her next year in drawers. Return next, in her next, her next. A bat flew, here, there, here, far in the gray, a bell chimed. Mr. Bloom, with open mouth, his left boot sanded sideways, leaned, breathed, just for a few. Cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. The clock on the mantelpiece in the priest's house cooed where Canon O'Hanlon and Father Conroy and the Reverend John Hughes, S.J., were taking tea and soda bread and butter and fried mutton chops with ketchup and talking about cuckoo, 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 because there was a little canary bird that came out of its little house to tell the time that Gertie McDowell noticed the time she was there, because she was as quick as anything about a thing like that, was Gertie McDowell. And she noticed at once that that foreign gentleman that was sitting on the rocks looking was cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. Happy Bloomsday, everyone. Stay safe from the Rosenbach.
I'm Rebecca Romney of the Roadbook firm Type Punch Matrix. Today I'm going to be reading from Chapter 14, Oxen of the Sun. Here we go. Deshiel Hollis Amos. Deshiel Hollis Amos. Deshiel Hollis Amos. Send us bright one, light one, whorehorn quickening and womb fruit. Send us bright one, light one, whorehorn quickening and womb fruit. Send us bright one, light one, whorehorn quickening and womb fruit. Hoopsa boy boy hoopsa. Hoopsa boy boy hoopsa. Hoopsa boy boy hoopsa. Universally, that person's acumen is esteemed very little perceptive concerning whatsoever matters are being held as most profitably by mortals with sapience endowed to be studied, who is ignorant of that which the most in doctrine erudite, and certainly by reason of that in them high mind's ornament deserving of veneration, constantly maintain, when by general consent they affirm, that other circumstances being equal, by no exterior splendor is the prosperity of a nation more efficaciously asserted than by the measure of how far forward may have progressed the tribute of its solicitude for that proliferant continuance which of evils the original, if it be absent, when fortunately present, constitutes the certain sign of omnipotent nature's incorrupted benefaction. For who is there who anything of some significance is apprehended, but is conscious that that exterior splendor may be the surface of a downward tending, lutilant reality, or, on the contrary, anyone so is there unilluminated as not to perceive that as no nature's boon can contend against the bounty of increase, so it behooves every most just citizen to become the exhortator and admonisher of his semblables, and to tremble lest what had been in the past by the nation excellently commenced might in the future, not with similar excellence accomplished, if an unvaricant habit shall have gradually traduced the honorable by ancestors transmitted customs, to that thither of profundity that one was audacious excessively who would have had the hardihood to rise, affirming that no more odious offense can for anyone be than to obliviously neglect, consign that evangel simultaneously command and promise, which on all mortals with prophecy of abundance, or with diminution's menace, that exalted of reiteratedly procreating function ever irrevocably enjoined. It is not why, therefore, we should wonder if, as the best historians relate, among the Celts, who nothing that was not in its nature admirable admired, the art of medicine shall have not been highly honored. Not to speak of hostels, leper yards, sweating chambers, plague graves, their greatest doctors, the O'Shiels, the O'Hickeys, the Ulysses, have sedulously set down diverse methods by which the sick and the relapse found again health, whether the malady had been the trembling withering or loose boyconal flux. Certainly, in every public work, which in it anything of gravity contains, preparation should be, with importance commensurate, and therefore a plan was by them adopted, whether by having preconsidered, or as the maturation of experience, it's difficult in being said which the discrepant opinions of subsequent inquirers are not up to the present congrued to render manifest, whereby maternity was so far from all accident possibility removed, that whatever care the patient in that all hardest of women hour chiefly required, and not solely for the copiously opulent, but also for her who had not being sufficiently moneyed scarcely, and often not even scarcely, could subsist valiantly, and for an inconsiderable emolument was provided. To her, nothing already then and thenceforward was anyway able to be molestful, for this chiefly felt all citizens, except with proliferant mothers, prosperity at all not can be. And as they had received eternity, gods, mortals, generations to befit them her beholding, when the case was so hoving itself, prurient in vehicle their word carrying desire immense among all one another was impelling on of her to be received into that domicile. O thing of prudent nation, not merely in being seen, but also even in being related worthy of being praised, that they her by anticipation went seeing mother, that she by them suddenly to be about to be cherished, had been begun she felt. Before born, bliss babe had. Within womb, one he worship. Whatever in that one case done commodiously, done was. A couch by midwives attended with wholesome food reposeful. Cleanest swaddles as though forth-bringing were now done, and by wise foresight set. But to this no less of what drugs there is need, and surgical implements which are pertaining to her case, not omitting aspect of all very distracting spectacles in various latitudes, by our terrestrial orb offered together with images, divine and human, the cogitation of which by sedjunct females is to tumescence conducive, or eases issue in the high, sun-bright, well-built fair home of mothers, when, ostensibly far gone and reproductive, it is come by her thereto to lie in, her term up. Some man that wayfaring was stood by house door at night's oncoming. Of Israel's folk was that man that on earth wandering far had fared. Stark ruth of man his errand that him lone led till that house. Of that house a horn is lord. 70 beds keeps he there teeming mothers, are wont that they lie for to thole, bring forth bairns, hail so God's angel to Mary quaff. Watchers tway their walk, white sisters and ward sleepless. Smarts they still, sickness soothing, in 12 moods thrice 100. Truest bedthanes they twain are, for thorn holding wariest ward. In ward wary the watcher, hearing come that man mild-hearted, eft rising with swire, he wimpled to him her gate wide undid. Lo, Leven leaping, lightens an eye-blink Ireland's westward welkin. Full she dread that God the wreaker all mankind would fordo with water for his evil sins. Christ rude made she on breastbone, and him drew that he would wraith and fare under her thatch. That man her will, wadding worthful, went in Horn's house. Loth to irk in Horn's hall had holding, the seeker stood. On her stow he ere was living with dear wife and lovesome daughter, that then over land and sea floor 9 years had long outwandered. Once her in town-hithe meeting he to her bow had not doffed. Her to forgive now he craved with good ground, of her allowed that of him swift-seen face, hers, so young then, had looked. Light swift her eyes kindled, bloom of blushes, his word winning. As her eyes then on God his weeds swart, therefore, sorrow she feeled. Glad after she was that ere dread was. Her he asked if O'Hare doctor tidings sent from far coast, and she, with gameful sigh, answered him that O'Hare doctor in heaven was. Sad was the man that word to hear, that him so heavied in bowels ruthful. All she there told him ruing, death for friends so young, algate sore and willing God's right wiseness with say. She said that he had a fair sweet death through God his goodness with mass priests to be shriven, holy housel and sick men's oil to his limbs. The man then right earnest asked the nun of which death the dead man was died, and the nun answered him and said that he was died in Mona Island through belly crab 3 year agone come Childermas, and she prayed to God the all-ruthful to have his dear soul and his undeathliness. He heard her sad words, in held hat sad staring. So stood they there both a while, and wan hope sorrowing one with other. Happy Bloomsday from the Rosenbach.
Hi, I'm Lenore Steiner, Vice Chair of the Rosenbach and a devotee of Bloomsday. I first became involved with the Rosenbach about 25 years ago when I joined the Ulysses reading group there. And though I struggled like many with the novel, I sensed the power and greatness and have since reread it many times. I got to know and love the Rosenbach and its collections and to enjoy the outstanding programs that it always offered. Bloomsday, of course, being the standout tradition and a wonderful annual event in our city. 15 years ago, my then fiancé, Perry Lerner, felt that there would be no better place for us to marry than in Dr. R's study, in the presence of James Joyce's manuscript. And we did. And I think the old artificer was smiling that day. I reference the book daily. It just has that effect and that hold on its followers. I hope that this year's celebration, though virtual, will be as thrilling as the trip through Dublin always is, and that we'll all be together again on Delancey Place next year. Happy Bloomsday.
Happy Bloomsday from the James Joyce Centre in Dublin. My name is Darina Gallagher and I'm director of this wonderful centre, right in the heart of the Hibernian metropolis. James Joyce once said that if you get to the heart of Dublin, you could get to the heart of the world. And this Bloomsday, we hope that Dublin is indeed in everybody's hearts. Happy Bloomsday, everyone.
Hi, I'm Edward G. Pettit of the Rosenbach, and I'm going to read some of Ulysses for you. This is from chapter 14, Oxen of the Sun. It's actually my favorite chapter in the book. Throughout it, Joyce imitates the styles, the literary styles of authors throughout the history of the English language. And in this section I'm going to read, he's imitating late medieval Arthurian prose, most like Sir Thomas Malory would have written his L'Amour to Arthur. This, meanwhile, this good sister stood by the door and begged them at the reverence of Jesu our altar liege lord to leave their wassailing, for there was above one quick with child, a gentle dame, whose time hied fast. Sir Leopold heard on the up floor cry on high, and he wondered what cry that it was, whether of child or woman, and I marvel, said he, that it be not come or now. Meseems it dureth over long. And he was ware, and saw a franklin that hight Lenehan on that side the table, that was older than any of t'other, for that they both were knights virtuous in the one emprise, and eke by cause that he was elder, he spoke to him full gently. But, said he, or it be long too, she will bring forth by God his bounty, and have joy of her childing, for she hath waited marvellous long. And the franklin that had drunken said, accepting each moment to be her next. Also he took the cup that stood before him, for him needed never none asking nor desiring of him to drink, and now drink, said he, fully delectably, and he quaffed as far as he might to their both's health, for he was a passing good man of his lustiness. And Sir Leopold, that was the goodliest guest that ever sat in Scholars' Hall, and that was the meekest man and the kindest that ever laid husbandly hand under hen, and that was the very truest knight of the world, one that ever did minion service to Lady Gentle pledged him courtly in the cup, woman's woe with wonder pondering. Now let us speak of that fellowship that was there to the intent to be drunken, and they might. There was a sort of scholars along either side the board, that is to wit, Dixon, yclept Junior of St. Mary Merciables, with other his fellows, Lynch and Madden, scholars of medicine, and the franklin that hight Lenehan, and one from Alba Longa, one Cruthers and young Stephen, that had mien of a friar, that was at head of the board, and Costello, that men clepen Punch Costello, all long of a mastery of him, erewhile jested, and all of them reserved young Stephen. He was the most drunken, that demanded still of more mead, and beside the meek Sir Leopold. But on young Malachi they waited, for that he promised to have come, and such as intended to no goodness said how he had broke his avow, and Sir Leopold sat with them, for he bore fast friendship to Sir Simon, and to this his son young Stephen, and for that his languor becalmed him there after longest wanderings, insomuch as they feasted him for that time in the honorablest manner. Ruth read him, love led on with will to wander, loth to leave. For they were right witty scholars, and he heard their arizons each gen other as touching birth and righteousness, young Madden maintaining that put such case it were hard the wife to die, for so it had fallen out a matter of some year agone with a woman of Eblana in Horn's house, that now was trespassed out of this world, and the self-night next before her death all leeches and apothecaries had taken counsel of her case. And they said farther she should live, because in the beginning, they said, the woman should bring forth in pain, and wherefore they that were of this imagination affirmed how young Madden had said truth, for he had conscience to let her die. And not few, and of these was young Lynch, were in doubt that the world was now right evil governed, as it was never other, howbeit the mean people believed it otherwise, but the law nor his judges did provide no remedy. A redress God grant. This was scant said, but all cried with one acclaim, nay, by our Virgin Mother, the wife should live, and the babe to die. In colour whereof they waxed hot upon that head, what with argument and what for their drinking. But the Franklin Lenehan was prompt each when to pour them ale, so that at the least way mirth might not lack. Then young Madden showed all the whole affair, and said how that she was dead, and how for holy religion's sake, by rede of Palmer and beadsman, and for a vow he had made to St. Ultan of Abracan, her goodman husband, would not let her death, whereby they were all wondrous grieved. To whom young Stephen had these words following: Murmur, sirs, is eke oft among lay folk. Both babe and parent now glorify their Maker, the one in limbo gloom, the other in purge fire. But, gramercy, what of those God-possibled souls that we nightly impossibilize? Which is the sin against the Holy Ghost, very God, Lord and giver of life? For, sirs, he said, our lust is brief. We are means to those small creatures within us, and nature has other ends than we. Then said Dixon Jr. to Punch Costello, wist he what ends. But he had overmuch drunken, and the best word he could have of him was that he would ever dishonest a woman, whoso she were, or wife, or maid, or layman, if it so fortuned him to be delivered of his spleen of lusty head. Whereat Cruthers of Alba Longa sang young Malachi's praise of that beast the unicorn, how once in the millennium he cometh by his horn. The other all this while pricked forward with their jibes, wherewith they did malice him, witnessing all and several by faint Futinus, his engines that he was able to do any manner of thing that lay in man to do. Thereat laughed they all right jocundly, only young Stephen and Sir Leopold, which never durst laugh too open, by reason of a strange humour which he would not bewray, and also for that he rued for her that bare whoso she might be, or wheresoever. Then spake young Stephen, orgulous of Mother Church, that would cast him out of her bosom, of law, of canons, of Lilith, patron of abortions, of bigness wrought by wind of seeds of brightness, or by potency of vampires mouth to mouth, or, as Virgilius saith, by the influence of the Occident, or by the reek of moonflower, or an she lie with a woman which her man has but lain with effecto secuto, or peradventure in her bath according to the opinions of Averroes and Moses Maimonides. He said how at the end of the 2nd month a human soul was infused, and how in all our Holy Mother foldeth ever souls for God's greater glory, whereas the earthly mother, which was but a dam to bear beastly, should die by cannon, for so saith he that holdeth the fisherman's seal, even that blessed Peter, on which rock was holy church for all ages founded. All they bachelors then asked of Sir Leopold, would he, in like case, so jeopard her person as risk life to save life? A wariness of mind, he would answer, as fitted all, and laying hand to jaw, he said, dissembling, as his wont was, that as it was informed him, who had ever loved the art of physic as might a layman, and agreeing also with his experience of so seldom seen an accident, it was good, for that Mother Church belike at one blow had birth and death pence, and in such sort deliverly he scaped their questions. That is truth, pardy, said Dixon, and, or I err, a pregnant word. Which hearing young Stephen was a marvellous glad man, and he averred that he who stealeth from the poor lendeth to the Lord, for he was of a wild manner when he was drunken, and that he was now and that taking it appeared eftsoons. But Sir Leopold was passing grave maugre his word by cause he still had pity to the terror-causing shrieking of shrill women in their labour, and as he was minded of his good Lady Marian, that had borne him an only man-child, which on his 11th day on live had died, and no man of art could save, so dark is destiny. And she was wondrous stricken of heart for that evil hap, and for his burial did him on a fair corslet of lamb's wool the flower of the flock, lest he might perish utterly, and lie a-kelled, for it was then about the midst of the winter. And now Sir Leopold, that had of his body no man-child for an heir, looked upon him his friend's son, and was shut up in sorrow for his forepast happiness, and as sad as he was that him failed a son of such gentle courage, for all accounted him of real parts, so grieved he also in no less measure for young Stephen, for that he lived riotously with those wastrels, and murdered his goods with whores. That was fun. Happy Bloomsday from the Rosenbach.
Bloomsday 2020 is made possible through a generous grant from the Consulate General of Ireland's Immigrant Support Program. This project is also supported through the Pennsylvania Humanities Council, the federal state partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Special thanks to Lenore Steiner and Perry Lerner, and to the South Jersey Celtic Society. Thank you so much for supporting Bloomsday 2020.